Take on Tech, a weekly program that comes to you every Tuesday via KBC Channel 1. It's a program about technology concepts and debates, and brings them to you in a non-tech way. This is usually done by a panel of experts. In today's program, we are going to be looking into guidelines on conducting yourselves online. Maybe it's meetings, maybe it's school. And it is because during this COVID time, we have seen a lot of online engagement through by offices, by organizations, by individuals. And so we just want to look at some of the guidelines that you should adopt while you embrace online meetings or online work. And to help us understand how to do that, we have Thomas Kaberi. Thomas Kaberi is a sales and digital culture consultant. He will be discussing the guidelines with Victor Capio. Victor is an ICT lawyer and techie in business and human rights. Karibuni, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Now, Kaberi will go straight to starting this program. As a digital consultant, can you please tell us what is this digital culture all about?
Yeah, so digital culture is basically the combination of attitudes, expectations, and practices that help people to get the most out of technology. So in digital transformation, we said that there are three aspects that of an organization or a community that needs to be addressed when you want to transform them to more of a digitalized community. And the first one is a skill set. Do people have the skills that help them to make the most of technology? The second one is tool set, which is basically equipment, the platforms, the technology that enables them to do things in a better way, more efficiently, or to make better decisions. The third one is the mindset, and that is the culture aspect. So the culture aspect has to do with the expectations, attitudes, and practices that people do that help them to get the most out of their technology.
I'm interested in the question of mindset. Do you mind elaborating what you mean by that? And in relation, say, to staff and organizations?
Yeah, so mindset is probably the toughest part of digital transformation, and that's because technology is quite straightforward, and there is a lot of amazing options and tools out there for you to achieve any technology goals you might want to achieve, or you can even, and there's also skill out there that can help you build it. So the issue of hard skills and the issue of technology are the easiest part. The mindset of helping people to adapt to new power structures, helping people to adapt into new ways of doing things, new definitions of success, new ways of attributing and tracking that success, that's the difficult part. So for you to be successful, you definitely need to upgrade your culture in order to make the most out of your technology. So in terms of organizations and what they need to do, or even communities and individuals.
As somebody who has been working in this area, and as organizations have been on either lockdown or partial lockdown in the last 3 months, what is your general feeling of how organizations are conducting themselves online?
Okay, so how are organizations conducting themselves online? Okay, that's very interesting because a lot of opportunities have emerged and also a lot of challenges have emerged. So a lot of organizations that are service-based, which is a huge part of our economy, service-based institutions might find it easy to transfer their roles and some of their functions into online or into the virtual space. But organizations that require either a combination of the services and the actual production of items, or because of their security levels, or because of their just manual way of operating, they're not able to transfer some of those functions to the virtual space, those ones will struggle. However, it is also different in the sense that the interaction part of work has also been hugely challenged. So if people who are used to sit down together in an office to make decisions, now they are having to quickly to reorganize that. If supervision was by physical monitoring of people, that is having to change, and those are the now behaviors or practices that we need to relook at, and they are informed by our attitudes towards work. So if people feel like they need to have somebody looking over other people for work to go on, that's going to be a challenge. If people feel like technology it poses a risk to the organization, that then means that they'll feel even more at risk. But we need to evaluate the practices we've had even at our workplaces and start determining how useful or how practical they could be on the virtual space. Because even if this crisis passes, another one could come, which might not be as hefty as this one in terms of the impact, but we could face many other challenges, because now our customers are now used to getting serviced online. Our clients now are getting used to being met online. So that means that certain effects of COVID or of COVID will remain even after we go back to what people are calling the old way, or post-COVID, or after recovering from this situation. There are certain aspects, or there are new expectations that have emerged. Now, for example, like I used to do about 4 to 5 meetings, right? And now, because I don't have to move around town for these meetings, I'm able to do a lot more meetings. If a lot more people are thinking like that, then they will demand that you do more of calls and more of meetings, virtual meetings rather than physical meetings. That means then you still need to adapt to the new way of doing things. I think then organizations need not look at this as a passing wave, but rather as an opportunity whose benefit you can reap for even longer.
Okay. I like that point about the need for organizations to evaluate the current practices at workplace. And I think we will come back to that question of, how COVID is going to influence the way organizations work after this season. Now, Victor, you are a practicing lawyer you are an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and the judiciary has actually been commended during this COVID time for making a high number of rulings. Actually, there has been, there was a day that one judge made 54 rulings, I think in one afternoon, and that was quite something for this country. Now, as a practicing lawyer and advocate of the High Court, how would you say the judiciary is faring in responding to COVID-19?
Thank you very much, Grace, for that question. I think the judiciary has made significant progress compared to what it had done in the previous years. I think for our viewers, it's important to just note that currently the case backlog, I think, as of technology has also, and the COVID period has enabled, because of people not coming to courts, I think it has also allowed judicial officers time to write their judgments and write their decisions, which usually they won't have time if they are present in court, and they also have to look for time to work on those decisions at home. So there's some benefit, but it also shows that there's actually a capacity gap, in the sense that the judiciary doesn't have quite a number of officers to enable it to discharge and complete cases in time, which is something that the judiciary will need to think about. And also the progress, we can see quite a number of courts across the country. Almost all the courts now have embraced technology in one form or the other, which, looking at the previous attitude and what Thomas had just mentioned, that the mindset, when you have people, not just judicial officers and the judiciary as an institution, but also practicing advocates and other court users being unwilling, and because we want to practice the law as we know it, coming before a judge and making your case, but now you have to stand behind a screen and try to make your point across. So the development that is actually progressive is the rapid adoption of technology to enhance service delivery within the judiciary, whether it is in terms of video conferencing, but also the judiciary has introduced e-filing, which previously you could take a while or a long time just finding the right registry to file your case. But now with an online process, it has also simplified the bureaucracies that exist, and making payments have been much more efficient through M-Pesa and KCB banking. So it's actually possible to transact judicial business much quicker. Just to mention that earlier, last week, I was in court in Nyeri before the High Court, and I woke up, I took 10 minutes, and I finished my matter. So we can see that I didn't have to travel to Nyeri and come back. That would have taken a whole day, but in 10 minutes I was already done with my matter. So we can see how video conferencing that has been embraced by the judiciary is actually helping case management to make things move much quicker. So that is actually progressive, and we look forward to more technology and more solutions to enhance the speed that justice gets to Wanjiko, because currently it takes at least 3 years to conclude a case, and with technology, I think we can make those numbers that timeline much less. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor. Quite interesting that you were able to attend that matter in Nyeri, because I was going to ask whether the use of technology is only happening in Nairobi or whether it's happening in other courts, but you have just confirmed that it is happening in Nyeri. And I would want to hear whether it's happening in Turkana. So as you tackle that, you mentioned there's an issue of capacity. Would you please tell us what areas of capacity building need to happen so that then we can make use of technology in our courts more efficient?
Thank you. Capacity is a big issue, especially if you look at how the judiciary was transitioning or embracing the technology after announcement that the courts were going to start being open, is that judicial officers were told embrace technology, but there was no systematized approach or guidance in terms of what technology to adopt, how to do it, and even procedures that are required to be followed. So first, you find that there is an infrastructure issue because not all courts are connected to internet. Equipment, not all judicial officers or court stations have the right equipment or the right internet connection to facilitate video conferencing. There are also the capacity issues in terms of using the specific technology. Initially, we had issues of moving between Teams, Skype, or Zoom. And now at least the courts are starting to standardize and make Teams the standard one that courts are using across the country. So there was a capacity gap in terms of even the judicial officers understanding when to put the mic on, when to put it off. So in terms of usage of the technology, there are challenges there. Also, on the part of other court users, that means the prosecution or even practicing advocates who are appearing before the courts. You find that not so many people are familiar with the various technologies that are being adopted, and also because of the fragmentization. Today you're appearing before Mombasa High Court, they're using Teams. Tomorrow you come before Nairobi and they're using Zoom. Tomorrow, the next day, they're using Skype. So it brought about confusion also amongst the practicing advocates who are coming before the courts, because they didn't understand the different ones, because all of them, they don't operate the same. Challenges in terms of process. How do you join? When do you join? And that information being available. So there was also a bit of a challenge in terms of just judiciary availing information and in a standardized way on their website or on the social media pages and things like that, that could enable court users and people who actually have cases before the courts to actually enable them follow up on their cases. So we've seen quite a bit of gaps, whether it is institutional, infrastructural, or even human, in terms of just how to transition from physical practice in courts to also to use technology. So, but what we're actually seeing now is that there's a lot of progress. People have now started understanding how to use the systems. People have learned that you need to buy bundles and make sure that you have a stable internet connection. People are starting to upgrade their devices. Those ones who are joining with phones which had not so very good quality cameras, they've also tried to upgrade. The judiciary has also upgraded, although challenges still remain in terms of even just availability of the equipment, because the government procurement procedures are not as quick to enable the procurement of some of those things which are required. They didn't have time to do a lot of training for the staff, so those ones, I think many people are learning on the job. Practicing advocates are also, we've seen LSK trying to make some efforts to train lawyers on how to join cases online and how to file online. So the challenges are there, but also we can see some positive actions are being taken across most of the courts in the country. So there's good progress.
Okay, it's interesting. I think I was seeing on Twitter, one of the judges had been quoted as saying that every time he's online, he spends so much time asking, "Can you hear me, my lord? Can you hear me, my lord?" And he was just wondering what his neighbors think, or who do they think he was addressing. Okay, Thomas, speaking from where Victor has left on issues of capacity, and as somebody who works with organizations in enhancing digital culture, are there other areas that need to be strengthened for organizations so that they're able to work effectively?
Okay, I think standardization is one thing. I think it's important that that has been mentioned. So that is not a challenge that is isolated to any organization that like the judiciary, which has to adapt very quickly under very strenuous circumstances. So it is a good, I think it's a good opportunity that people have had to learn while under pressure, because sometimes change has to be necessitated by circumstances like the one that we are in today. So the organizations, I think since it's been now over 2 or 3 months now that we're going to the 3rd month of COVID, of the shutdown, I can say, I think it has dawned on very many people that the only opportunity they have right now is to adapt very quickly, because the people who started adapting a month ago, they are ahead right now. They have settled down. They've cleaned up their house. They've dealt with the major issues, and it is a stage that everybody will have to go through. So the earlier, I think, the better for anybody who embraces the situation we are in. What are the things that organizations need to do? I think people now need to start thinking about policy instead, beyond tactics, because it was just survival and it all looked like survival tactics. So policies need to be reviewed, because there are certain things that were tradition to a lot of organizations. There are certain practices that were very precious to organizations, and I think those need to be reviewed at a policy level, so that now people don't start feeling like they're pushing the envelope rather than they are really matching up to the expectations that are set. So policies need to be relooked, and also a bit of training. And training is not too difficult. I mean, getting online nowadays is as easy as just switching on the camera on your phone. But how you position it, how you dress up for the meeting, how you adjust your tone for the meetings, how you settle down, the way you approach the meetings, that has to be as probably formal as it normally was in your office. And the client interactions, people have been a bit understanding in terms of how casual you can be, but now people are realizing that since this is going to be the way of life, then we need to take it as seriously as we need to. So policies need to be...
Thomas, I wanted to pick that line about being serious about online operations in the same way as you are to if you're doing these things physically.
Yes.
But I want us to take a short break, and when we come back, you will pick it from there. Okay. We are talking about guiding principles of working online with Victor Capio and Thomas Kaberi. When we come back, we will start with Thomas giving us guidelines or some of the tips of still continuing to work online. Take on take, we are back, looking at guiding principles of working online. Before we took a break, Thomas Kaberi was telling us, giving us some of the areas that need strengthening when you are working online. And Kaberi, maybe you can still continue and give us some of these tips that people need to know, like some of the basics that they need to have in place. You did talk about dressing. What's that? You did talk about time. What's that? Please break it down for the viewer.
Okay, as we said, I think the idea of practices is something that we need to really be keen about. You know, when you're working from home, it's easy to take the relaxed posture that you have in your home to the meeting that you're having online from your home. And I think that's probably something that needs to be looked at. It's important to evaluate the culture and the level of formality for a meeting. So if you're going for a serious meeting and you know the people in that meeting require or at least expect a certain level of formality, try to match up to that level, both in your speech and in your dressing, in your presentation, yeah, so that we maintain the seriousness on issues that as they deserve. So the other idea is also being very well prepared for the meeting in terms of setting up the environment, so that if you're having a meeting in your home, please notify the people in your house that you're going into a meeting and it's a serious one. And now I see it is becoming more of a trend. People are just allowing the kids to come into the meeting and say hi to everybody in the meeting. I think that's a cultural trend that's emerging. We are yet to see how that goes. But at least let people know that family is around and you might be interrupted, so that at least they expect it. So those are the kinds of things that we need to start matching up to. And the other thing is the length of the meeting. I mean, while people online might be very forgiving, they're also very distracted. So if you have very long online meetings at home, at some point people, I've read that 45 minutes is probably the cap, yeah, of having an effective online meeting, because after that people get distracted. You'd rather have a couple of short meetings, 2 or 3 of them, rather than just have one long meeting. So you have one meeting and then later on in the day have a second one, and probably the following day have a third one. So instead of having a very long meeting, half of which is being interrupted and people are distracted.
Okay, you talked about formality, maintaining formality, and to depict that you're also very serious. And I'm just interested in finding out from Victor, when what is expected of participants during these virtual hearings. For example, if it's a court hearing, we usually see people bowing down when they're addressing the magistrate or the judge. What's expected of people during a virtual hearing? Are they expected to bow down?
Thank you very much, Grace. Well, most of the sessions are conducted while people are sitting. So in terms of how the process is going, is a small nod of the head like that will suffice. And of course, a number of all these virtual court hearings are being conducted as closely as possible to court proceedings. However, with a few modifications, we are expected as court users to be formally dressed and to conduct ourselves formally, just the same way we'd conduct ourselves before the ordinary open court session. And that means being properly attired, speaking the right language, and being in a quiet room, being prepared for the session, and so on and so forth. So we are not expecting, because then it would be demeaning of the court or be disrespectful of the court if I appeared, for example, in court in the morning wearing a t-shirt and wearing a hat. The judicial officer would not know whether this is a practicing advocate or is that the brother of the advocate who is actually before the court. So in terms of helping to, in terms of identification, it's important for counsel to be properly attired so that the court also recognizes that actually counsel is in the room and we are not the client who is coming before the court. The same rule also should apply to judicial officers, because you also don't expect to come before a magistrate or a judge and the magistrate is wearing a kitenge and you're wondering, am I in the right room, am I in the right court, and who is who here? So when people are properly attired and they conduct themselves properly, then it also helps in the dispensation of justice and also maintains the respect that the courts deserve. Thank you.
Okay, great. Kaberi, we come back to you, and we have consistently seen an increase in these online meetings. And of course, even schools are also conducting class sessions using online platforms. And what sometimes has emerged is that the person conducting the online meetings will say, I have lost the rights of muting your microphone, or I am no longer the host. Somebody else has taken, that hosting right. This morning, my daughter was, having classes, and I think maybe the teacher was having challenges. And one of the girls in the classes actually kicked all of them out of the classroom. So what is the role of a convener in an online meeting?
Okay, so I think there are a couple of things there. So there's the skill aspect where the person who is hosting the meeting needs to be conversant with the tool they are using in terms of the program they're using, whether that's Skype or Zoom or whatever other program that can be used. So the host needs to familiarize themselves. You can easily Google up a YouTube video that demonstrates how to do this. Use the particular tool that you're using. So the other aspect is also the social aspect, helping other people to know that etiquette is still primary even within meetings. So I think there are other factors around that also, which I should mention, which is safety and security and privacy. So there's usually a lot of debate around safety and security, but privacy is really the first line of defense. So people need to be sure that they are creating enough privacy, they're taking the privacy precautions within a meeting. So for example, whether that's Zoom or Skype, make sure that you're sending links only to those people that should be attending, and you're also not allowing everybody into the meeting as they in and out of the meeting as they wish. So that means that you're in control of who is in the room, sort of the virtual room, and who is not. And if anybody needs to come in, you should be able to admit them and also allocate certain levels of rights. So that means then that you need to educate people. So if it's a school, and this is the policy aspect that I was talking about, if it is a school, then kids and their parents need to be notified of what they can and cannot do during class while the class is in session. The other thing I would like to mention is that there's a responsibility to parents, especially when it comes to kids. It's very, very important that you keep monitoring your child while they're online. I think that's really, really important. Leaving your child for hours on end online without having an idea of what's happening or which sites they are visiting, or even if they're attending a class, whether they attended the class and how that class went, that sort of can be almost irresponsible. So it's very, very important that that parents take time to monitor their children even when class is ongoing, because there has been incidences where classes have been interrupted by other people who have been malicious. So that's important, and therefore even the skill set. Fortunately, kids and technology is like fish to water, so they take it very quickly. But also, it's important to sort of like enforce that level of responsibility and make sure that they have the right skills, whether they are teachers or whether they are kids attending class.
Victor, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yes, I think something that sometimes is often forgotten is because these services are online, to have a working internet connection and to have a backup backup internet connection. So if you're using your Wi-Fi at home, then also just make sure that you also have some bundles on your phone, so that in case the internet goes off or the power goes off, you have another alternative source of an internet connection, because we sometimes take it for granted. Things like making sure that your microphone and your speakers and video are actually working before the meeting. When I was in court last week, one of the advocates who was on the other side had joined, but the microphone was not working, so we had the session and they couldn't hear, so somebody had to be explaining to him what is happening on the text. So you can see that when you've not set up your computer before, it can also give you challenges after. There are things around timekeeping. We usually, as Africans, we have our African time, or is it the Kenyan time? And when a call is at 9 o'clock and you want to join halfway in between, it makes it difficult for other people who are already in the room to want to start giving you an update of what has been happening, what has been said. So generally, timekeeping then becomes important. And also, as for courts, when the court starts at 9 and you're not there, then if your matter is called and you're still trying to fiddle with your gadgets, trying to get the connection, it might also bring a few challenges here and there. So I think those are little things that we can also consider. Other than that is just to minimize disruptions, sitting in a quiet room, making sure that there's enough light so that people can actually see you, making sure that your computer is in good working order, and that the environment that you're in, the people have been notified that you're going to be on a call, so that there's less disruptions. And I think sometimes the background, some people want to sit and put a shelf, some people want to make sure that the other parts of the house are actually visible. I think it's also important to avoid sitting in a place where the background is destructive, because people will not focus on you who is talking, but they'll want to see what books do you have on that shelf, which color is your sofa. So if we try to sit in a place where there's a plain background, which is probably white, is useful to minimize disruptions for other people. I've also noticed that there are people who take pictures of them in these sessions. I think it's also important to minimize taking photos, especially if you're appearing in court and you want people to know it is because if you don't take pictures in court, we should also not take pictures of ourselves and broadcast them to say that we are participating in court sessions. So I think those would be useful places to start.
Okay, we have 5 minutes to go, and I really would like us to just focus on what are some of the major trends that we should look forward to post-COVID-19 in terms of technology. And maybe, Victor, you can pick it from there before we come to Thomas, because you've told us that you attended a court in Nyeri from your house. Will that, for example, translate into lowering legal fees, say, if we were to embrace technology?
That's not going to happen. Interesting. Well, we want the fees to go up because we will be working harder for our clients. But I think what we should expect moving forward from the judiciary is to see the opportunity in using technology to fast track the hearing and determination of cases, and make sure that Wanjiku and all other court users who appear before court have their matters completed in good time. And so moving forward, if the judiciary were to recruit more officers, then you can see a situation whereby they can quickly conclude matters without having to wait for parties. Because a number of the times, what delays cases is people who, my mother is sick, I went to the village, or I was delayed in traffic. So those things can be minimized, and people can actually participate in court proceedings from wherever they are. And I hope that the judiciary can enhance and increase the opportunities for use of technology in court practice, especially even to places which do not have court stations, that they can actually use it, especially in prisons and other detention facilities, for example, where the prisoners have to be moved to court stations, that those ones can now end, and the cases can be heard online and remotely through video. Things about having meetings, those ones can be done online, and hopefully, we reduce the case backlog so that when you file a case today, within 3 months, you've gotten your decision. And it will help because many people have so many cases in court, and if there's a solution, and that is technology that can help, then I think it should be embraced moving forward.
Yes, I was actually appalled the other time, Victor, when the chief, there was a report in I think in one of our media, saying that if you have a matter now, and a matter that has to do with land issues, that the earliest you can expect a determination is in 2 years. And I was just thinking, what happens to people who have very urgent cases, or who are desperate to actually have their land matters determined? And what you have said, I think, is a good thing if the judiciary can consider the use of technology to actually dispense with some of these matters. Kaberi, to you now, what are some of, what should we expect with organizations post-COVID?
I think a lot of organizations have already tasted the benefits despite the strenuous circumstances they've had to operate in. And I think the moment that people have tasted some of these benefits, one of them I think is going to be real estate. A lot of people in the real estate now are asking what will happen to people who've realized all of a sudden that they don't need as much room as they needed for especially commercial space. So if you had these organizations that had people coming into the office every day and they had 3 floors of space, some of them are wondering, why do we need 3 floors of space while we see clearly that people can work from home? Secondly, at a performance level, people have now had the opportunity to assess whether the work from home is actually a concept that can be utilized. And for a lot of people, I can speak for myself, and I work in a tech company, so that helps. We've seen that people don't have to travel to the office, people don't have to travel to client meetings, people don't have to travel to meetings, and in fact, people are only coming to the office just to take a break from home. And we've realized that cuts a lot of cab taxi costs. It cuts a lot of time for the people who have to come back and forth. If somebody has to travel, say, for example, from Thika Road all the way to Kilimani, that's almost an hour and a half one way. That's 3 hours every day that person just sits in a vehicle without much productivity. So I expect that a lot of organizations will look at these benefits and start looking at how they can make them more permanent. The other issue is, I think it's going to disrupt our culture, in the sense that even like a lot of times people didn't think that even the mama mboga or the lady who fries fish can actually be onboarded into the digital world. Now, and digital does not mean really an application really, but now people are calling that lady to make food, to prepare whatever it is, and then have a border person deliver it to their house. So that aspect is going to change, and at a very small scale we can see that. In government, I can see that a lot of government organizations now are doing online meetings. The other week we had a presidential conference online, and I was like, over 20 heads of states were on a digital platform having a Pan-African meeting, and important decisions were made. And I think that is going to, when people start relooking at the cost benefit of these kinds of operating, at a cost level, people are going to embrace a lower cost way of doing things. In terms of culture, I don't believe that meetings will go away entirely, because we are still very social human beings. I was surprised the other day that as soon as the hours were extended, people are very happy to go to restaurants and order mutahi kagwes. So I think I think that the professional aspect, because it's more objective and it has cost implications, that might change. But I think that people will still want to meet. I miss a lot of people that I used to attend a lot of conferences with, and I can't wait for the time that I'll be able to see them again. Yes.
All right. I think that sums it up. You've summed it up very well. And some of the issues that I would just like to highlight is when you have that online meeting, please take a shower, keep time, get dressed, avoid, things that can disrupt your meeting, or things that, in the background, like Victor pointed out, that people want to see how your house looks like, what type of a sofa you keep in the house. So please turn that and have a wall that then people will not be disrupted. So thank you very much. We have been talking to Thomas Kaberi, who is a sales and digital culture consultant, and together with Victor Capio, who is an ICT lawyer and a techie in business and human rights. And they've been talking to us about the guiding principles of working online. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And until next week, when we have another program on Tech on Tech, my name is Grace Gidaiga. Please remember to wear a mask, sanitize, keep social distance, and please obey the guidelines from the Ministry of Health. Goodbye.